I'm Kelly, also known as Keely.
And I'm Alex, also known as Feely.
We are sisters, and together we produce a YouTube series called Happy Hobbit.
In each episode, we teach you how to bring Middle-earth into your daily life.
Alex,
Yes.
when did you first read The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien?
Those are pretty good, I've heard. Well, in fact, I've actually never read them because a certain someone read them to me.
That's right. That's right. There's a little bit of an age difference going on here, and I was the older one at the time. To the dismay of the purists out there, we actually saw the films first, and that's what sparked my interest in Tolkien and in Middle-earth in general. So I naturally asked for the books for Christmas, and immediately started reading them to my little sister.
Yeah, that was really cool and really fun. Because I feel like Tolkien has so many songs and poems that it's not completely play-like, but because it does have those elements, it's really fun to read it out loud, especially when you're a kid and like Pippin's singing in the bath and splashing, and it's awesome.
That said, I can't sing, so I probably traumatized her when I was going.
You think Pippin is like an expert singer?
Hobbits are good at singing.
Doesn't mean they have elven voices.
But they're very musical beings.
Yeah. Our first impressions of Middle-earth and Lord of the Rings as a whole and Tolkien were obviously very positive, and we really enjoyed them. I think being raised in a very woodsy area with animals, being really in touch with the earth and, you know, just livestock and kind of Hobbit lifestyle really drew us into that world, especially because, you know, the books start off in the Shire. That's like immediately what you're pulled into. So
Concerning hobbits, that's like that's my go-to comfort chapter. Whenever I'm feeling down, I just reread Concerning Hobbits, because it just kind of reflects the pastoral life, the pieces of pastoral life that we so cherish and hold dear to us.
Yeah.
What it was about these books that made me dive in so deeply, to the point that I even studied Old English, which, if you don't know, is the language of the Rohirrim, the people of Rohan, and was the language of our ancestors. It's the parent language of modern English. It is also a dead language, so it was quite difficult to study.
Yeah.
And what made me dive so deep into language was because Tolkien was a professor of language. He was a professor of Old English at Oxford. And I was so fascinated by the textures of Middle-earth, by the fact that there was history there, that there was depth and breadth, which I was so longing for in my escapism, that I wanted to expose myself to some of the same influences that Tolkien had exposed himself to. I'm a writer as well. I write under the pen name K.M. Rice, my initials, and obviously Tolkien has had a tremendous influence on my writing and my storytelling, just because I am so into it.
You like Lord of the Rings?
Nerd moment. And I already had, I found myself already following many of the same paths that he took, potentially before he even wrote Lord of the Rings, such as a fascination with the Beowulf manuscript. So one of the reasons I jumped at the opportunity to take Old English was because it also provided for me the ability, or opportunity rather, to translate the Beowulf manuscript from Old English into modern English. And what I loved about that experience is the lexicon for Old English is incomplete. There are words that we just don't know what they meant. For example, Rendil. And that is a word that Tolkien latched onto and assigned his own meaning to. So it was just, for me as a fan, to look through and see, oh my gosh, this ignited that spark in him, and this ignited that spark in him, and see where he got some of his inspiration was really rewarding. And I was also getting my own inspiration from doing that translation work and exposing myself to the world of the Anglo-Saxons. So that was definitely a big impetus for me to dive deeper into Middle-earth in a scholarly way, but in more of a lighthearted fan way. I know you really related to not only the Hobbit lifestyle, but Rohan. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, all the elements of the Hobbits obviously really hooked us in, and myself, but all of Tolkien pays so much attention to horses and animals, and that is just so cool, into the forest. And as horse people and forest people, tree huggers, the Ents and Rohan and, just Shadowfax and Brago, all these horses that are characters. And that's so cool. And, you hardly ever see that in books. And Tolkien was just so good at putting in these characters, human or not, human, hobbit, horse, that are so rich and represent a part of people's lives and a part of the world that...
And culture.
Yeah, and culture that I feel like is brushed under the rug a lot, especially in our current time period.
Yeah, that's true. Because we are moving fastly towards a complete urbanization. And
Ents would not like it. This one, we need Treebeard to come and ah!
And I think there's a definite similarity to the way that we were raised in a rural lifestyle and the way that Tolkien was raised. Granted, he was born in South Africa, but he spent a lot of time in England. And, he said himself that he was crafting hobbits kind of to mimic the common everyman of the English countryside, of that pastoral landscape. And for him to have lived at a time period to see the fires of industry destroying that agrarian lifestyle and changing the way that people lived their lives from being farmers to working in factories and to having things mass-produced, and to seeing the earth destroyed for the goods that we all consume was really shattering to his soul. And we've grown up in an area where, of course, we've witnessed that. And to see the destruction of beautiful spaces, of natural spaces, is akin to desecrating the sacred. And I know that there's a very strong environmentalist message in Tolkien's work, and that's just part of who we are. You can't separate that, I think, out of either of us or anyone in our family because of how we were raised, with great respect for the planet and for the earth and for life, all forms of life. And Tolkien beautifully exemplifies that, whether they're different races of men or dwarves or elves or even orcs.
Yeah.
Or if they are more ancient beings like the Ents that you were talking about. I think that he does a beautiful, very poetic job of synthesizing all these different elements together in a mythic landscape that is accessible and tangible to everyone through the use of archetype and through the use of epic storytelling. That does harken back to the myths that, if we did not have them, the myths that we wished we had. And that speaks universally to people.
Especially in this day and age, I feel like Tolkien and his message about, with all his environmentalism stuff, is so pertinent and so important to remember and pay attention to that, because, yeah, as we know, there's a lot of not so good stuff going on. I became an expert in terms of Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, not in a scholarly way, because even though obviously I do like books, I'm not as into more that side of things, but I do feel like from doing our show Happy Hobbit has really made me realize, and I guess kind of become an expert at more of living the Middle-earth lifestyle. All of the cultures that Tolkien has put out there in the world for us through the hobbits and through the people of Rohan really reminds you how to live simply and how to just and the elves, of course, and really all the races.
Sometimes tangentially through the dwarves.
That's true. But it reminds you, and through our show, it all together reminds you how to live simply and how to appreciate what's there, appreciate the trees, appreciate the pig at your neighbor's house who's really cool and helps you eat the stale bread that you can't eat. Just like all these simple things of more like people used to live, and you can still do that today, and it's really important to do that today, and it's more gratifying, it's more fulfilling. So many people get caught up in going to work and going to the office, and those are ways we have to survive today, but sometimes you have to slow down and eat like a hobbit and pet a horse like an Eomer, and and like through our web series we obviously really promote that, and I think that really helped me kind of realize that I guess we kind of already were somewhat experts in doing that because of that was just our lifestyle. But yeah.
And we're also, part of why we do our show is because we are very aware that most people live in urban environments and that they don't have the luxury.
And that we're very, very fortunate to.
Yeah, they don't have the luxury of being able to pet a horse or walk amongst the trees. So we try to help them vicariously come on the journey with us. And that's been a thread of our show from the very beginning, because we had a video go viral. We were watching the trailer for The Desolation of Smaug. It got a lot of hits on YouTube. Then Peter Jackson himself saw it. And not only did he see it and share it, but he filmed the elven portion of his cast reacting to us, reacting to the trailer. So that kind of skyrocketed our little web series into basically the international spotlight. We were in media all over the world, and there were people asking us for interview requests, and it led us on this whirlwind adventure to the red carpet premiere of The Desolation of Smaug, the second film in the Hobbit trilogy, and the final film, The Battle of the Five Armies, where we actually got to meet and converse with not only Peter Jackson, but with many of the cast and crew and the people who brought those films to life, which was very exciting for us. And we were happy to be filming all of that so that our viewers at home could come along with us on the adventure vicariously, because in a lot of ways, we feel that we represent the fans. And there was some guilt attached to us having these amazing opportunities. A lot of guilt. Because we thought, well, why us? You know, why
not everyone else?
Why not all these other wonderful people who also want to be able to be on this adventure? And so we did our best to bring that to them. And we do that through Happy Hobbit, and every episode we do our best to try to bring whatever it is we're teaching you about, the craft, the recipe, you know, the piece of information about raising livestock. We want to make it accessible to as many people as possible. And I think that's truly in the spirit of Tolkien, because he was someone who was trying to make, you know, going back to languages, Old English something accessible to everyone. He was trying to make the mythology of his home country, England, accessible to everyone through retelling it in a very creative and fantastical way. I would never call myself an expert in Lord of the Rings or Tolkien or Middle-earth. I believe I'm a passionate fan, but you'll always meet people who know far more than you do.
Go to a convention.
Yeah, and you'll find
geniuses.
People who've memorized the books, basically, backwards and forwards. However, I found myself in the very unique position of not only producing this web show, but having been given the opportunity to go on these adventures, such as the red carpet premieres of The Desolation of Smaug and the Battle of the Five Armies. And previous to that, I had been building a relationship as a writer with Weta Workshop, who are the folks who brought so much of what you see in the films to life, and they're people who are incredibly passionate about Tolkien. Everyone who worked on those films, I shouldn't say everyone, almost everyone who worked on those films came to the job because they were massive fans of the books, and I think that's why it translates so well on screen when you have that level of commitment and investment in it from day one, from the concept art all the way through to the final cut of the film. As such, and being a Tolkien fan, I was given the job of doing additional writing and research for what has become the definitive tome on Middle-earth and Peter Jackson's film trilogies, which is Middle-earth from script to screen, building the world of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. As you can see, it's a massive book, and it was just an absolute delight for me, again, as my pen name, K.M. Rice, to be able to contribute to this book. And I will show you. I'll show you. This is like my little name of fame.
Oh yeah.
There you go, K.M. Rice.
Lord of the Rings has brought so much to our lives, whether it was through our web series, meeting wonderful people at conventions, bonding with just our friends over Lord of the Rings, and all the characters and everything, in our personal lives as well. My boyfriend and I's first interaction actually was in a writing class, and he corrected my spelling of Nazgul. And we've been together for a few years, and it all started with that.
So if Tolkien hadn't ever been born, maybe you two would never be together.
I know, I mean, I was the front of the class kid, he was in the back, so...
Ooh, probably never would have met.
Nope, you just gotta get Nazgul in there.
Yeah, that's a word of advice, dating advice, everyone.
Put a Nazgul in the middle and you're good.
It's true love.
It is. Well, what about you?
I came to the Lord of the Rings books at a very troubled time in my life. I was going through the transition of high school to college, and I was feeling very lost and confused about my direction. And when I found Lord of the Rings, it was not only a beautiful form of escapism, but I found it as a guiding light in many ways. Because there is so much truth in these books. There is so much that speaks to the heart and to the soul. And, you know, we've been talking a lot about the rural lifestyle and how that's reflected in Tolkien's writings. He also has this great reverence for nature. So as you're reading, you do feel like you are out in these beautiful spaces and sometimes harrowing spaces that he describes. But more than that, it is an homage to friendship and to honor and to the coming together of peoples despite their differences to unite against the destruction of what they feel is good. And in the same way that you can look at Beowulf and Grendel, the beast, coming to knock on the halls and tear men apart inside the halls in Beowulf as the darkness that can creep into our lives, so too can you look at that in Tolkien with the rise of Sauron and the power of the One Ring and its greed. It all really boils down to greed and the fact that there is nothing that will stop the destructive force of greed, and that it is up to each and every one of us, whether in our own hearts to stem the hold that greed has on us, or in our communities, or in our families, or in our friendships, any way that we can. I found that this story just greatly symbolized the darkness that we've all faced before and the journey of climbing that mountain, of climbing Mount Doom and casting the ring aside, throwing aside whatever it is that's sickening you and poisoning you in your life and getting rid of it. And remember, Frodo can't quite do it on his own. He needs the help of Sam. And that beauty of that friendship and of all the intimate friendships in those books is something that you don't really see honored in modern storytelling. And it really brought home to me how important love is in the world and how important it is in our daily lives, no matter what form or shape it's taking. And that we're here to support each other. We're here to protect what is good and green in the world and to save it from destruction in any way we can. And those will either be the green spaces in nature that we are so lucky to enjoy, or they're the insular protected shires within our own hearts that we're trying to harbor safe.
Or protecting each other.
Yeah.
You know?
Helping each other.
Helping each other and keeping everyone safe.
So that was immediately what the role that Lord of the Rings played in my life. And that's why when I say when I was facing dark times, I would go back to Concerning Hobbits and reread that, and it was very comforting to me. But professionally, Lord of the Rings has completely changed my life because it built relationships for me as a writer and as an author and as a storyteller that I otherwise would not have built, because through a mutual passion and love of Tolkien, it led to me working in New Zealand with the filmmakers on several projects. It's led to introductions in the industry. It's led to, probably more importantly, incredible friendships with people who we never would have met if not for coming together over this mutual love of Tolkien. And that's been incredibly rewarding.
It has. And all this wonderful Tolkien-related work that you've gotten, it wasn't because we went viral or because necessarily even of our web show. When that all started, we were tiny and we had like 10 fans. But it goes back to what we were just at the convention and we were just being nerds, we were being ourselves. And I feel like that's another really strong part of Tolkien is staying true to yourself and going out there and going for it. Because our first convention was San Diego Comic-Con, and that's like a big scary deal in the nerd world. I mean,
that's the mother of all conventions. If you do not know what San Diego Comic-Con is, it is 150 to 200,000 of your tribe, of your nerd tribe.
It's amazing, but it's a lot.
It's overwhelming to two little hobbits.
Yeah, but yeah, just putting yourself out there and being a brave hobbit and going out the door like Bilbo, it can lead you to amazing things.
It can. That's
really
true.
can.
I hadn't thought of it in that way, but that's a very good point. That we were just out there being ourselves. And again, that speaks to protecting the Shire within yourself.
Yeah.
Protecting that part of you that is maybe more innocent and more childlike and in touch with the world and in touch with the planet, in touch with the earth and in touch with nature, and honoring that part of you even as you go forth into the dangers that await.
Of Mordor, of San Diego Comic Con. The security guards are the orcs. Don't sit there! Sorry.
But it was through taking those risks. It was through taking those risks and going and putting myself out there and just being who I am that caught the attention of at least one person in particular who held some power, who said, you know, he really enjoyed the conversations we were having, and he said, I want to look at your stuff. You're a writer. I want to see your stuff. And that's what led to my incredible work on Middle-earth from script to screen.
Really cool book.
Building the world of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, which is the definitive tome on Peter Jackson's Middle-earth. And that was an incredible opportunity for me. You know, I got to live in New Zealand. I got to work with the filmmakers themselves and the people who tirelessly brought this beautiful epic to the screen. I got to co-author with Daniel Faulkner, who is an amazing, amazing person and a wonderful writer in his own right. So that was kind of like the culmination thus far of this crazy journey that started off with watching a film and reading a book and delving so deep into a fictional world, because following your passion, staying true to yourself in that way, can lead to amazing things. We weren't trying to achieve any of this. Yeah. It just came to us by putting that energy out there. So always follow your heart.
Yeah.
Always follow your
No matter
dream.
what a small hobbit you are.
And the smallest
or big
person.
orc.
Yeah. Alex and I came to San Diego Comic Con several years ago as volunteers with the premier Tolkien fan site.
TheOneRing.net.
That's right. And we were volunteers, and we helped them out at the convention, and it was a wonderful group of people, and we wanted to find a way that we could fit in the staff and contribute in our own right. So I actually came up with the idea for Happy Hobbit after meeting so many people on that trip who were like, you're from somewhere where you can have goats and chickens and you grew up riding horses? How is that possible in today's world? And that's when Alex and I did some self-reflection and realized, gosh, our lifestyles really do reflect a lot of the lifestyles in Middle-earth, and that is a fading thing. But it doesn't have to be. We can teach, we can teach people how to do this, and there is a resurgence in hobby farms. There's a resurgence in self-sustainability. So that was kind of our focus.
Keely and Feely are a pair of dwarven brothers in The Hobbit, in case you forgot. One of our Tolkien friends, who is also staff on TheOneRing.net, is the one who nicknamed us Keely and Feely. And he's Beaufort. He knows who he is.
That's who we've nicknamed him. It started because the Hobbit films were coming out. My name is Kelly. It sounds a lot like Keely. Twist it with maybe a down-under accent as Keely. So it was natural for people to call me Kelly.
Plus the dark-haired one, lighter-haired one.
And then it transferred to my sister, siblings, so she became Feely. Whether we liked these names or not, that's what we were called. And
it stuck.
It got to the point that by the time we saw the first Hobbit film, we're like, who are these guys on screen with our names?
I know. Through our episodes in our show Happy Hobbit, we do show you how to bring Middle-earth into your daily life. Whether that is through, if you have animals, say chickens, or if you're interested in getting them, or through your goats or dogs, or even simpler ways if you're not like us and have livestock, just making a recipe that Pippin would like, or going on a walk and trying to look at the woods through an elf's point of view. You could
making a bird feeder.
Yeah, making a bird feeder.
To feed the wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
Or making one of our episodes was on a Matham keeper. So, it was a Matham in and of itself. If you don't know what a Matham is, you better look it up.
In a lot of our episodes, we do teach you recipes, and food is such a big part of Hobbit culture, and, a decent part of the books, the dwarves and the hobbits do love their food.
I don't know if there's a culture that he doesn't describe food in.
Yeah, true. Lembas bread. we teach you how to make that. But whether it's through recipes, like I said, it can be in the small ways, recipes, and just appreciating nature. It doesn't have to be riding a horse, you know? It can just be the little things.
The little things go a long way.
They do.
We recently taught how to make homemade vanilla for baking.
That's true. That's true. My favorite passage from The Lord of the Rings would be in the very beginning of The Fellowship of the Ring, when Frodo and Pippin are talking, and Frodo recites part of one of Bilbo's poems that many of us remember from The Hobbit.
Typically, it's called The Road Goes Ever On.
Yeah. But I feel like it really symbolizes our whole journey of stepping out your door, and you never know where the road's gonna go. The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow if I can, pursuing it with wary feet until it joins some larger way, where many paths and errands meet, and whither then I cannot say.
Wise man, that Bilbo.
He is. He's a very wise man. Gotta drink your tea, eat your food, and go outside.
One of my favorite scenes in The Lord of the Rings is in the Two Towers, when the Ents go to war and the forest fights back against the powers of industry and destroy Isengard. Some of those passages are just absolutely gorgeous. But another favorite passage of mine is about Aragorn remembering Arwen and when he first met Arwen in Lothlorien. So that is in the Fellowship of the Ring. At the hill's foot Frodo found Aragorn, standing still and silent as a tree. But in his hand was a small golden bloom of Eleanor, and a light was in his eyes. He was wrapped in some fair memory, and as Frodo looked at him he knew that he beheld things as they once had been in this same place. For the grim years were removed from the face of Aragorn, and he seemed clothed in white, a young lord, tall and fair, and he spoke words in the Elvish tongue, to one whom Frodo could not see. Arwen, Vanimelda, Namarie, he said, and when he drew a breath, and returning out of his thought, he looked at Frodo and smiled. It's just so romantic and lovely.
It is.
And so perfectly conveys the act of reminiscing. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Alex.
Please vote for Lord of the Rings as America's favorite book!
Yes!
Tolkien rules! Tolkien!
Tolkien!
The man!
Yeah! He's the elf
Hobbit
man!
Elf!
Dwarves man!
Or killer!
Yeah!
Maiar! Preserver!
Nazgul maker!
Ent!
Baker?
Saver.
Okay, hopefully that wasn't too insane.
I'm Kelly.
And I'm Alex.
Please vote for Lord of the Rings.
Wait, sorry.
I know.
Okay, I jump in it. Please.
I'm Kelly.
Oh wait, I wasn't ready.
Oh, sorry.
I was looking at the doorknob. Because I feel like it looks weird sticking out from the door.
Oh. You ready?
When you're talking, I'm like, just kind of looking around to look at
I know,
you,
that's what I'm doing, and then
fine?
every once in a while I remember to say
You see the rabbit run by?
Yes, I was trying so hard. I hit you. That rabbit ran for its life. It just went, I don't know what it saw.
You probably heard something.
Okay.
Okay.
You ready?
Sorry, editors.
I know.
Especially that I messed up more. Okay.
Okay. Be serious. What am I talking about?
Expert.
Okay.
I feel like I became an expert in. Oh, I keep saying and you just remember I was filming for Hobbit.
Yeah.
I keep thinking of all these terrifying people watching it.
I know, and then your brain goes.
I know. I can't think of anything. I sound really stupid. Okay.
The little bunny outside is so cute.
Oh.
Alex, when did you first read Lord of the Rings? By J.R.R. Tolkien.
They're pretty good. Those books? Well, actually, I have never read them. I've been read. Wait, I just ruined my joke. I'm gonna say you read them too.
And
okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I feel like we should have True.
Still kind of have respect, but yeah.
There, now we're level 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll just be like,
Oh, that sounds really good.
want to do it again?
Sure.
Because you were talking kind of quiet.
Okay.
And you don't need to say where in every episode.
Okay.
In every episode.
Okay. Well, whatever then.